Christ is risen.
Indeed, he is risen.
Listen to the words of one of the prayers in the Byzantine church this week. The midpoint of the feast has arrived, the days which begin with the resurrection of the Savior and are fulfilled in the divine feast of Pentecost. Truly, it unites both feasts and draws light from their double brightness, giving honor to the ascension of the Lord, who prefigures our glory. Double brightness. Isn't that ingenious? The resurrection, Pentecost. Right smack in between is where we are now, mid-Pentecost, and right in there will come in a few days the Feast of the Ascension, which, as we said in the prayer, see, the prayer always tells us what we believe. That's the truth you only get in church. That ascension prefigures our glory. It's not just Jesus going up into heaven. Oh, wow, isn't that nice? Bye, Jesus. We're down here, a bunch of schleps. No, it says it prefigures our glory. Imagine, in the midst of all this darkness, this fear, this sickness and death, shut down, bored, aggravated, anxiety, all this bad darkness, amidst that, week after week, what's happening right now in this Paschal season? Light, stories of brightness, of Christ coming into that, forcing us to proclaim and recognize Christ as the ultimate. You know what this pandemic has done? What I believe God has done? He's shown light, like the double brightness of resurrection and Pentecost. He's shown light on the world. When you show light on something, you expose it. Everything comes out in the light. And Jesus Christ right now, God Almighty, is exposing the world. And what's happening is that which is bad and dark and evil is becoming very apparent, isn't it? We can't hide the shadows now with all of our malintent and our evil. It's out there now. We know who's who now, don't we? At the same time, light is being shown on what is glorious and holy and heroic and good. And light is being shined on us personally. We're being seen what we're made of. Really, what is our faith? How deep is it really? Who do we really rely on? What's really important to us? What is really essential? What were we doing all this time with our lives? How much time were we wasting entertaining ourselves with the internet and all kinds of nonsense? And now we're bored. We don't know what to do now that we're home together. Light has been shown on all of us. Then Jesus Christ in the gospel comes up to this woman. The same thing happens to her as happening to us. Listen to this text from the liturgy. Christ met the Samaritan woman by the well. Though he asked for water, he thirsted for her salvation. He knew everything she had done. She gave him a drink and drew living water, the fullness of joy. She proclaimed to all in her own town, "Behold, the Messiah foretold in the law of old has appeared clothed in humanity, and he has unveiled all my hidden thoughts." It says that Jesus came. Jesus came because he thirsted for her salvation, for her heart, her soul. And he thirsts for ours. That's why he's set us down on our behinds and taken all this nonsense away from us. He wants us to think about him and think about who we are and where we're going and what is really essential. And it says here that the woman says, he unveiled all my thoughts. She tried to fend him off. She, like us, was into all kinds of worldly things to satisfy the hole in her heart for love. Like we do today. You get married, you go, "Gee, I married the wrong guy, wrong girl. Get rid of the bum, because Mr. Right and Miss Right's around the corner." Then that one doesn't work either. Get rid of him, next one. It's one thing after the other of this world that we grab and search for. Let's go to the internet. I'm bored. Let's look at pornography. Let's go to the bar and get drunk. It's always something of this world that we're trying to fill that hole with. And God has finally said, stop it. Sit down. The bar is closed. And get off the computer. Look at your wife and your kids. Look at me in your heart. He knew what was in there. And she tried, like we do, she tried to fend him off, give him a line of baloney. Oh, yeah, that's not my husband. He says, yeah, I know it's not your husband, girlie. And you've had 5 of these guys. Boy, he went right there, right? He went right to the heart. He went right to where she was thirsty, because God knows our heart. He knows what we want. We don't. But we're learning. Maybe. In Numbers chapter 20 in the Bible, the Jewish people are in the desert. They had no water. So they get mad, like us, always complaining. Something's wrong. It's not like we want it. So they complain to Moses. Moses turns to God. God says this, Moses, take your wooden staff. And see that rock over there? Hit it. Moses hits the rock, and water, life-giving water comes out of the rock. So much water, they were able to feed their livestock. Can you imagine it from a rock? Now, Moses, Christ is now the new Moses. And he comes to open the rock through the wood of his cross, the rock of that woman's heart. That was hard as a rock. And so she searched for one guy after the other. But her heart was hard because it was wounded. So she couldn't love. And she thought it was about the other guy. He's no good, I'll get another one. He's no good, I get another one. It was her heart, it wasn't the other guy. It was her heart that was a rock, and Christ came and broke that rock open and revealed herself to herself and revealed him to her. And she was changed. He gave her life-giving water. He gave her the answer. Look in the icon. Remember last week? Think about last week. We had the paralytic who had his mat. Remember? And Jesus said to him, take up your mat. Remember that detail I pointed out last week? Take up your mat. Because the mat was a symbol of his codependency, of his reliance on worldly things. He couldn't get off that mat. 38 years. Well, guess what? Now we have another cure. Jesus comes along and water's involved. But now this is a spiritual cure, psycho-spiritual cure. And look, right here in the icon, she holds her water jar. And what was it that she left behind after she encountered Christ and was changed? She leaves her water jar behind. Why? Because like the man with the mat, that water jar was a symbol of what could not satisfy, but she kept reaching into that well, but she was still thirsty. That water jar is what she left behind, symbolic of everything that was not of Christ, that was simply worldly, that just didn't work, just like we do. The well didn't do it for her. She had to keep coming back. She came out there at noon. The gospel says noon. So you got to hear the details. Noon is the hottest part of the day. And no one would have been out there getting water then. Why did she go out there? Because she was ashamed of herself. And she didn't want anybody to see her. The well of her heart was dry. That well was deep. That jar kept her coming back again and again and again, like the man on the mat. That jar, that man's mat, we have a lot of those things, don't we? And God is saying now through this pandemic, leave those things behind and come to me for your answers. Christ is risen.